Friday, July 29th, 2022, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Today we're going to look at a money expert here in the UK called Martin Lewis and how he's calling for more government spending to solve the cost of living crisis, or the inflation crisis, if you want to call it. Yes, he's not the only one, of course. President Biden is coming out with a new inflation act to try to bring down inflation, which is another Keynesian fallacy, of course. We're going to look at both of those things. Before I start, though, I like to say that I have two affiliates. One is Gold Investments. The other, Gold Investments, they're one of the, arguably one of the oldest bullion dealers in the city of London. They're family run. I have a promo code with them, Maneco64. If you quote that promo code, you will get a slight discount. I personally think it's still a good time to exchange, where any time is a good time to exchange your fiat currency for real money, gold and silver, if you can. I think we're at a juncture where it's going to get harder and harder to access physical gold and silver. Yes, the prices seem to have bottomed, the paper prices in the short term. I'm not saying we're going to go to the moon or anything. My philosophy, of course, has always been dollar cost averaging and being very patient, because gold and silver are the only money that have survived for thousands of years. The fiat dollar, the fiat pound, all fiat currencies, of course, eventually go to zero because governments and central banks abuse the power to create them. The other one is Glint. Glint is similar in that, yes, you can buy bullion, but they keep it stored in an allocated account for you in Zurich, Switzerland. My referral code there is MarioGlint79, and they give you also a MasterCard with which you can actually spend the gold if you want. All the details for those two affiliates are below in the description. So now to Martin Lewis. He's a so-called money expert, money and savings expert in the UK. And the reason I'm talking about him is because some of you in the comment section about a week or two ago said, well, Martin Lewis is really good. Maybe you should have him on your channel. And I'd heard of this guy, but to be honest, I never really follow people like that trying to tell me how to save my own money. My wife and I have always done that on our own ever since we got married almost 30 years ago. One of the first things we did was write a budget. So on one column we wrote our outgoings every month, and on the other column our income. And if we got into trouble, we tried to look at the outgoings and see what we could cut off from from spending that we didn't really need. And that's what economics is all about. The word economics comes from the ancient Greek, which means household management. So my wife and I have never really been into this kind of stuff because we try to do it on our own. So it stayed in the back of my mind, this talk of Martin Lewis on my channel, that I maybe should interview him. And recently, though, he's come out and with the cost of living crisis, with energy prices going up, yes, he's calling for the government to step in. So these are the headlines. Martin Lewis says energy bills at desperate point. Martin Lewis urges every UK household to do vital check within 60 days. Martin Lewis calls for zombie government to take urgent action over £3,500 pounds energy bills. So he might be an expert in helping people save money and get good deals, which is something I'm not really doing here. What I'm trying to do here is, of course, explain to you how the system works, how our currency system, because it's not really a monetary system because we're not using real money anymore, how it works and how it favors those who have assets, and it favors the bankers and governments, and how it's a losing proposition, of course, to save in the currency that we're forced to use. I've even spoken recently about trade unions or labor unions in the UK, maybe demanding payment in sound money and gold and silver. Maybe that's the problem. Well, not maybe. For me, that is the whole problem. So, as I said, he might be a good expert in saving and getting you good deals, but it doesn't seem like he knows the basics of economics. So I've done a little bit of digging into this guy. One thing that raised red flags for me is that he went to the London School of Economics, which of course was founded by the Fabians. Fabians, of course, they want world government and socialism. They don't want people to be self-sufficient and reliant. Tony Blair is a Fabian. Paul Volcker went to the London School of Economics. Yes, he did. Many of these globalists have gone there. James O'Brien of LBC, a lot of you probably have heard him in the UK, who's a lefty. He went to the London School of Economics. And maybe Martin Lewis is not a socialist, but it's just a mindset, the Keynesian mindset, that government, which creates all the problems, really. Governments start wars, they spend more than they should. What else? They regulate businesses, and they write up rules and regulations that hurt free markets and entrepreneurship. They tax people up to here. Yes, they're always doing the wrong thing. They bail out companies that they should not bail out. They shouldn't be bailing out anyone. They did that in 09, 08, 09 when the banking system collapsed. And I could see back then already that it was going to hurt us. So we have to pay for that. Martin Lewis doesn't seem to understand that government doesn't have any money. Government redistributes wealth. It needs to take wealth from those who produce and give to those that, their political, let's say, supporters and the public. He doesn't understand that the more government helps, the worse things are going to get. And also Joe Biden yesterday came out and he's talking about this, that he's come up with this new act to help Americans save, to cut their costs, healthcare costs.
Good afternoon. Yesterday I spoke with both Senator Schumer and Manchin and offered my support for a historic agreement to fight inflation and lower costs for American families.
I can tell you it's not going to work. Is it because I'm a pessimist? No, because when government gets involved in trying to help you, you can bet that the opposite is going to happen. So why are we in this situation right now? Well, I think we need to go back a lot further than COVID. We need to go back even to the early 70s, but I'll only go back to 08, 09. So back then, the Labor government bailed out the bankers in the city. The bankers, of course, had been, and not just the bankers, but also the government had been spending a lot. Interest rates were helping because they were low, and there's a housing bubble, and everything imploded. And the Labor government bailed out the banks. Yes, Lehman collapsed in the U.S., but here, I think the cost was $500 billion, and that's capped off our national debt, the bailout of the banks. So our national debt is a lot worse, and that really put us on this path to the Bank of England keeping rates at zero, continuing to do QE. And why is that? Well, because the Labour government and also the governments that came after that, the only way for them to keep the debt, servicing the debt and keep things going is to keep inflating, to keep rates low. Yeah, and the Bank of England is not independent, believe me. They wouldn't have done QE as they have done if they weren't, because the QE is just to help the government fund itself. So what happened, and also in 2020, they shut down an economy for 240 days. I counted it, the 2 lockdowns. And then they paid people. How do they pay people? Well, by borrowing from the future and taking on more debt and just writing checks to everyone to stay at home, doing nothing. So here we have 2 instances where government stepped in, and Mr. Lewis wants them to step in again. It's going to make things worse. Government needs to get out of our lives. But unfortunately, as I said the other day, we need to have a revolution, not bloody one, as I said, but in thinking. We need to realize that we are our own masters. We need to be self-sufficient. All government does is recycle effort from people and redistribute it to someone else, like taking from Peter to pay Paul. Money-saving expert founder said the zombie government. Now the government is a zombie. Well, in 2020, they weren't a zombie. Where were you trying to warn about all their spending in 2020? I didn't hear anything about you trying to warn about inflation. Must not wait until the end of the Tory leadership contest to decide on help for households. So how are you going to help the households? Well, you're going to take from some households and give to others. He dismissed the extra help promised by Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss during their leadership bids as trivial in the face of bills which are set to be £2,300 a year higher than they were last October. And he says, I've never seen anything like this. Yes, Mr. Lewis, because it's called hyperinflation. It's when you keep printing money and borrowing and running deficits and keeping interest rates artificially manipulated. The currency loses value. You need to do a little bit of research on that. It comes as oil companies Shell reported record profits of $11.5 billion, doubling its earnings in a single year, while British gas owner Centrica has been operating profits increase fivefold to $1.34 billion as energy bills soar. So here they're trying to pass the blame to energy companies. And the reason energy companies are making profits is because the commodities that they work with are becoming more and more scarce. Producers realize when there is hyperinflation that they need to protect their assets, their commodities. But of course, unfortunately, the general public will probably buy into this because Martin Lewis is a respected journalist. He's done a pretty good job in helping them, of course, save money and get good deals. But I would say it's going to get worse, especially if the government does what Martin Lewis is saying they should. And it might sound mean from me to say government shouldn't help, but government has been helping for years, and we're still in this situation. The analogy is like asking the mafia to take more money from you to help, right? Or another analogy is providing more and more drugs to an addict because he's had withdrawals. He needs his hit, right? It's the Keynesian philosophy. And hopefully this has helped. And maybe you could share this with friends and family, especially in the UK, but also all around the world, because this phenomenon of Keynesians calling for more government help to solve inflation or the cost of living crisis is something that is universal. It's not just happening here. So with that, let's quickly look at where the markets are this morning. It's 8:30 a.m. London time. We've got spot gold at $17.65. That's up about $9. High's been 68. The low's been 52. So we're up 0.5%. Silver is back above $20. I think it did really well yesterday. I think it was up over 5%. Right now it's come off the highs. We're at 20.06, up 8 cents. High has been 2024, the low 1989. The Dow future is up 56. The Nasdaq is up 172 or 1.3%. S&P 500 is up 29. S&P 500 futures, that is, of course. I'm looking at the futures here. FTSE 100 futures up 22, and the Euro Stocks futures up 34. To the currencies, sterling is up a third at 122.25. So it looks like the dollar has kind of topped here. I mean, sterling got down to like 117 recently, so we are seeing the currencies rebound relatively sharply here. The euro is up 0.5% at 102.50. The dollars continue to really come off here versus the yen. As I said, this is a sign that the Fed has turned dovish. We've gone from almost like 138. We're now at 132.74. We're down 1.13% here versus the yen. The dollar is, that is. Dollar's down a third versus the Swiss franc, 95.16. And the dollar's down an eighth versus the yuan at 673.50. Check the dollar versus the ruble. The dollars continue to trade up versus the ruble. We're at 61.80. To the general commodities, WTI crude is up 1.5%, 97.20. Brent crude is up 1.3% at 103.05. High-grade copper is up 1.25% at 352. And U.S. nat gas is up 0.5% at 817. Just check the Dutch TTF nat gas, see where we are this morning. Yeah, it has come off a little bit. It's down about 1.2%. It's just below 200. To finish off, we're going to look at the Treasury market. The 10-year yield is up 2 basis points at 270. The 2-year is down 3 basis points at 285. So the curve is disinverting a little bit. It's only inverted now by 15 basis points. But the damage has been done already. And of course, GDP was a lot lower yesterday, wasn't it? Down 0.9. Of course, there is no recession. But I notice a lot of mainstream publications, they're saying it's a technical recession, even the FT. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. Please share it far and wide. Think about subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. And with that, I wish you all a great day and a great weekend. Take care. Bye.